Hello, everybody, and welcome to Midday Report here on TVP World. I'm your host, Don Arleth, and this is the show where we're tracking the day's most important developments. So let's get started. We begin in Brussels, where NATO foreign ministers are meeting to try and figure out how best to support Ukraine and how to respond to any potential peace deal. For more on this, let's go to NATO headquarters and our correspondent, Alex Cadier, in Brussels there. Good afternoon, Alex. So we started strong with a $500 million pledge before the meeting even began. Now, what might this include? And as far as using frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine's loan, is there any progress on this front?
Yeah, well, Don, we've got two separate things at hand. I'll start with that 500 million. That's a package of support through NATO's Pearl initiative that allows NATO allies to buy military equipment from the United States and ship it quickly to Ukraine based on a priority list that the Ukrainians have provided. 500 million euros committed by Poland, Norway, and Germany. 86 million of that is from Poland itself. That will go into a variety of urgent needs for Ukraine, including air defense and other equipment. We've seen previous pledges, the Dutch in the last few days pledging 250 million, the Canadians today pledging 122 million euros. So all of this part of this Pearl program from NATO. We've heard from Radosław Sikorski announcing this, the Polish foreign minister, and let's have a listen.
We are making an additional expression of solidarity with the people of Ukraine, and Poland is delighted to be joining Norway and Germany in a package from the American program of supporting Ukraine, together the sizable sum of $500 million. We hope that the United States notices it. We hope that Ukraine notices it. And above all, we hope that other allies see it as encouragement to also take advantage of this program so that Putin gets the message and Ukraine can get a fair peace.
So clearly, Radek Sikorski wanting to see other allies doing more. Of course, Poland contributing. They want to see others being part of that scheme. Now, Don, to your other question, this reparations loan question, we heard from the Belgian foreign minister just this morning here. He is not happy with the situation as it stands. The proposals from the Commission to loan 140 billion euros worth of assets held here to Ukraine because of the legal risks, the financial risks to Belgium. They want more assurances from member states. Negotiations rumble on. The decision will be made mid-December right here in Brussels.
All right, Alex Cadier reporting there from NATO headquarters in Brussels. Thank you. Now to Hungary, where tensions overshadow unity as Visegrád Four leaders meet in Esztergom, while the Czech, Hungarian, Polish, and Slovak presidents gather to discuss regional strategy. The spotlight's on Poland's President Karol Nawrocki and his surprise decision to cancel his December 4th meeting with Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, raising questions about cracks in the bloc's cohesion and its future. Now we're joined live by our correspondent Andrew Sweeney, who's at the V4 meeting. Good afternoon, Andrew. So what can you tell us about the Nawrocki-Orbán rift, and what impact will it have on the future of the V4?
Good afternoon. Well, certainly this meeting between V4 presidents of the Visegrád Four countries, Czech President Petr Pavel, Petr Pellegrini from Slovakia, Tamás Sulík from Hungary, and of course now Nawrocki in Esztergom in the northern Hungarian border with Slovakia, has been completely overshadowed by that decision by Karol Nawrocki to not meet with Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. The two leaders, who have often been compared to one another given their views in the EU, were thought to be potentially quite close, but after Viktor Orbán travelled to Moscow to meet with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin on November 28th, President Nawrocki decided to cancel his meeting with Prime Minister Orbán on tomorrow. He is in attendance today, of course. The four presidents are discussed during their meetings competitiveness, regional stability, security and connectivity. And of course, connectivity is something the Visegrád Four has lacked, you could say, in recent years because of the fallout, disagreements between the member states over their policies towards Ukraine. Czech President Pavel today was at pains to point out the importance of this unity. So the meeting here is wrapping up, and later today the four presidents will visit the town and attend a Christmas market. Back to you.
Okay, Andrew Sweeney reporting there from the V4 meeting in Hungary. Thank you for that report. Now we're moving on to another development today, and it's decided Europe is closing the tap on Russian fossil fuels once and for all. Energy independence starts now, said European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, as the EU announced a deal to phase out Russian gas imports. Liquefied natural gas will be banned by the end of 2026 and pipeline gas by autumn of 2027. Our EU correspondent Angela Skujins reports from Brussels.
The European Union agreed on Wednesday to end the import of Russian gas by 2027. The agreement was brokered between representatives of EU governments as well as European Parliament off the back of a proposal set forth by the EU executive in June. The aim is to end the continent's decade-long dependency on Russian energy as well as support Ukraine as it weathers another year of Russian aggression.
Today is indeed a historic day for our Union. Last night, we reached a provisional agreement on the Commission's proposal to fully phase out Russian fossil fuels. We're turning that page, and we're turning it for good. This is the dawn of a new era, the era of Europe's full energy independence from Russia.
As part of the scheme, LNG gas will no longer be imported into the EU as of 2026, while pipeline gas expects to be phased out by September 2027. This is one other way the European Union continues to show its support for Ukraine through its wallet. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
High-stakes talks in Moscow after U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner pushed for a Ukraine peace deal. But after about 5 hours of talks at the Kremlin, negotiators left with little progress and plenty of tension, while a peace deal remains elusive.
U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner in Moscow for negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. But crunch talks at the Kremlin on revised American peace proposals ended with little to show.
So far we haven't found a compromise, but some American solutions seem more or less acceptable, and we can discuss them.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told Fox News Channel's Hannity show that Washington remained committed to achieving peace in Ukraine.
What we have tried to do, and I think have made some progress, is figure out what can the Ukrainians live with that gives them security guarantees for the future, they're never going to be invaded again, allows them not just to rebuild their economy, but to prosper as a country, be a country that has an economy that grows, theoretically, doing the right things. In 10 years, Ukraine's GDP could be larger than Russia's.
Russia's President Putin appeared more interested in war than peace, threatening Europe. Experts said it was a standard Putin tactic.
Putin said if Europe wants to go to war and starts one, we're ready right now. And that type of aggressive rhetoric isn't really anything new. He likes to saber rattle.
President Zelensky said senior Ukrainian negotiator Rustem Umerov will hold talks in Brussels on Wednesday with European leaders, national security advisors, and then visit the United States.
The Security Service of Ukraine has detained a British citizen, Ross David Cutmore, on suspicion of working for Russian intelligence. Cutmore arrived in Ukraine in early 2024 to train Ukrainian soldiers in the use of firearms and tactical skills. According to Ukrainian counterintelligence, several months later he left his job and reached out to Russian intelligence services with an offer of collaboration. According to Ukraine's security service, a Russian handler tasked the suspect with collecting intel about other foreign military trainers. He was also tasked with passing on coordinates of Ukrainian training centers. Additionally, Cutmore was also reportedly given instructions on building improvised explosive devices and the location of a weapons cache, from which he retrieved one sidearm and ammunition. According to investigators, Cutmore was passing information on to Ukraine's military and about Ukraine's military to Russia and plotting unspecified terrorist attacks. The suspect is in custody, and if proven guilty, he could face up to 12 years in prison. Charges will be brought against 8 people for their involvement in a Russian spy network that was taken down by Poland's internal security agency 2 years ago. The announcement comes after a separate Moscow-backed cell blew up a rail line 90 kilometers southeast of Warsaw in mid-November. In 2023, a 16-strong Russian spy network was convicted for their roles in a series of surveillance, sabotage, and subversion operations, including a foiled attempt to destroy a key rail infrastructure. And Poland's internal security agency said in a press release on Tuesday that as part of the current investigation into that network, the prosecutor has issued orders to bring charges against 8 additional members of the group. French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived in Beijing for his 4th state visit, aiming to navigate Europe's delicate balance between economic reliance on China and growing security concerns. His trip, which includes meetings with President Xi Jinping, comes at a time analysts describe as an inflection point in EU-China relations.
Emmanuel Macron has returned to Beijing at a fraught moment in Europe-China relations, hoping to turn diplomatic symbolism into tangible leverage. The French leader wants China to use its weight with Moscow and help steer the war in Ukraine towards a ceasefire, while also repairing an economic relationship that Brussels increasingly describes as unbalanced. Paris sees an opportunity to push for what it calls, quote, fair reciprocal market access, and Macron's delegation is expected to sign deals in energy, aviation, and food industry. Analysts say Macron is juggling 2 missions, security and economics. And as our expert explains, the stakes stretch far beyond bilateral ties.
There are 2 priorities. The first one is, of course, Ukraine, and to which extent we can put some pressure with China when it comes to its relationship with Russia. And the second is about trade relations, especially the unfair competition that China is pressuring the European economy and the European economies, especially since the comeback of Donald Trump at the White House.
His trip follows July's tense visit by the EU Ursula von der Leyen, who warned that Europe's relationship with Beijing had reached an inflection point. For Paris, this 3-day visit is about recalibrating a fragile balance, keeping diplomatic channels open, protecting European industries, and testing whether Beijing is willing to influence Russia at a decisive moment.
Poland is betting big on space, pledging 731 million euros to the European Space Agency over the next 3 years. That's up more than 3-fold from the previous commitment. Officials say the investment could pave the way for an ESA center here in Poland, just as the country launches its first military satellite. Sonia Gadabiszczan brings us the latest in this report.
At this year's Ministerial Council of the European Space Agency, Poland decided to invest 731 million euro in ESA for the next 3 years. Of that, 550 million euro are an optional investment, and optional investments return to countries in the form of industrial contracts. But even being a member of ESA brings benefits to Poland. For example, its nationals can work in ESA centers across Europe, like Szymon Stuglik working at the European Space Operations Center in Darmstadt.
I work in the space sector for the last 12 years. I still believe that engineering is the closest thing that we have to magic, to be honest. I truly enjoy the international, interdisciplinary and intercultural environment here at ESOC. And Poland contributes to ESA fantastic engineers. We've got incredible industry that is growing at amazing pace. This is also thanks to being part of the ESA environment.
And soon, Poland might get an ESA center of its own, as the country signed a letter of intent with ESA to that effect in November. This is just one of the developments in the Polish space sector, as the country also recently got its first military satellite, bound to enhance Poland's security. From Darmstadt for TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabishin.
And that concludes today's Midday Report. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day and hope to see you next time. Goodbye.